I'm now joined by James Marsh from Andromeda Metals. Really nice to meet you. Thanks for coming into the Sydney studio.
Thanks, Danielle.
So first off, I'm going to ask you to tell us about Andromeda Metals. Tell us a bit about your own personal history. You're all about HPA and halloysite.
Yeah, well, Andromeda historically has been a copper gold explorer, but in fairly recently it changed completely into a new area, a new direction, which is the industrial minerals and halloysite kaolin. So I was brought in as someone with about 30 years experience in the kaolin industry, and we're now pushing hard to turn into a developer of halloysite kaolin out of our Putera project in South Australia.
So we're pretty familiar with HPA, but can you tell me a bit more about the market value of HPA and tell us about halloysite?
Well, the good thing is that in Putera we have a huge deposit of halloysite kaolin, which is an unusual version of kaolin. Now this type of kaolin, it forms naturally into little nanotubes, which makes it very valuable in its own right for other applications, but also makes it a very high purity feed for HPA. And recent tests we've done have proved that we can get to a 4,9 HPA product in only one purification stage, and that is on a fairly sort of crude sample that we tested.
Tell us a bit about the end uses of these products. Tell us about sort of the market value of it.
Well, we've got a strategy here is a short-term strategy initially, which is to get halloysite kaolin into the market. The world market is growing and the world supply is falling, so it means there's a shortage here, and we've got a very large world-class resource of this material. Historically it's used in large amounts in ceramics for very high quality bone china, porcelain. We've got offtake agreements now in place for the raw ore material, so we can ship raw ore and make some good money on that hopefully, and also we can ship processed material, which we will process possibly at site. But initially we'll process overseas. At the moment we've got indications of up about at least 100,000 tonnes of raw ore offtake and over 200,000 tonnes of the processed material.
And let's talk about the project itself, the Putera project. Can you tell me about it? Tell me about the supply levels you're looking at getting from that?
Yeah, well the mineral itself is fairly shallow mineral, so it's open cast mining. It's more like a quarrying type mining operation, so it's very simple. It's all done dry, no water required. It's quite shallow. Just remove the overburden, and there you have your mine. You can mine the material in a short period of time, probably about 6 weeks. You can do a whole year's supply. Then you stockpile the material somewhere, then ship out on demand. So our plan is to push through the PFS as quickly as possible to get into development, start the direct shipping ore business going, and then the processed material. And then in the meantime, we're working on the HPA angle. Because we know we've got a very good feed material for that.
So tell me a little bit more about the customers, the offtake interest beyond what you've already locked in. What do you hope to achieve? Is this going into your PFS studies currently?
Yeah, well at the moment we've got offtake agreements for over 200,000 tonnes of processed material, but that's only from a very small area in China, which is the ceramics area of China. Now the whole world wants this material, so we've already got interest from several countries around the world. This is just a tip of the iceberg really, and the good thing for us is that the major production in the world of this material, the halloysite kaolin, was in China, which has now all been closed down by government environmental teams. So it means that there's a world shortage of this material. There's also a very large market for this mineral in petrochemical industry, for cracking petrochemicals, and that's something we haven't even touched on yet.
Tell me more about this.
Well, in petrochemicals, they use catalysts to crack and break down the molecules, so to purify the oil into the various grades of petrochemicals. And halloysite kaolin is a very good catalyst for that. Those companies would like to use it, but they can't get it at the moment. So once we're producing, then we can also supply that industry. And it's all the feature of these halloysite tubes, these nanotubes, which are very high surface area. They've got quite intricate little structures inside them. So this makes them also very interesting for the nanotechnology industry, as in for making carbon nanostructures. So we're also running a project with Newcastle University, and these materials are being used, so the halloysite is being used to make carbon nanostructures. And this application potentially could be much bigger than HPA for the batteries going forward.
So it's a really exciting asset. You've got a lot of potential markets around the world, various applications. Can you tell me, for Andromeda moving forwards, what are the big milestones for your investors?
Well, since we changed this direction to the Putera project, I got brought in to steer it in the right direction. And so the next stage is to push the PFS forward so we can get through to development. But the big milestone's happening next week. Next week we're doing a bulk sampling. So next week we'll extract about 200 tons of the mineral, and that's going to go off to full-size processing plants in China and in Australia. We'll put that through the plants, so we'll get full commercial operational information, technical information on how it processes. The processed material will then go to the customers, the end customers, and we'll get the same for the end customers.
Well, it sounds like a really exciting time, quality and quantity of some very interesting minerals there. James, thank you for coming in and educating us about Andromeda and halloysite and HPA.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thanks.